Hi, everyone. Thank you for participating in the Young Members Web Talks 2020. We in the Young Members Committee have organized this panel very carefully, thinking of different questions that the young members might have in terms of the things that have been happening, especially in this difficult year. We have organized these two questions on these panels to kind of illustrate a little bit more on what's going on and what are the trends on types of housing and urbanism and the different things and tactics and hints that the different professionals can give you in order to help you in this difficult year and also to help you plan on 2020. So again, I want to thank first our panelists for accepting our invitation for our web talks of the young members. I really appreciate, even we have some returning panelists from previous events that now that we see and our familiar faces always in the young members talks. Thank you again for participating. For now on, I'm going to continue on now and give the space to the Sean Reno from Indonesia, our vice president from the committee, who's going to moderate the first panel that we have set up for you. Thank you again for participating, for listening and joining us in these conversations. I think, like I said before, this is going to be very fruitful for all the attendees and the panelists.
Thank you, Andres. Good day, everyone, panelists and participants. Thank you for your time. My name is Sean. I'll be your moderator for today's session. Welcome to FIABCI Young Member Congress. Our theme today is My Home Has Changed. What am I looking for now? So we will be discussing the changes on the real estate market and development in relation to the ongoing pandemic. So today we gather our panelists with global experience to help us portray the condition, and hopefully this forum will help us navigate into the better future. I'd like to welcome our panelists to this online forum. Our first panelist, we have Mr. Budiarsa Sastrawinata. Hi, Mr. Budiarsa. He's the president of FIABCI Indonesia, and Mr. Budiarsa brings with him extensive experience. He spent part of his formative years in Europe before returning to Indonesia to begin his career. Currently, Mr. Budiarsa is the managing director of Ciputra Group and the president director of Ciputra Residence, the company behind numerous leading new town developments in Indonesia. He is also the CEO of Ciputra Group, latest international new town developments, namely Ciputra Hanoi International City in Vietnam, Grand Phnom Penh International City in Cambodia, and Grand Shenyang International City in China. For his outstanding performance in the project in Hanoi, Budiarsa received an award from Hanoi People's Committee, presented with the Asian Businessman Award in the Asian Capital Business Forum in 2007. Welcome. And as our second panelist, we have Mr. Roberto Moreno. Hi. Mr. Moreno is the co-founder and CEO of Grupo Amarilo, one of the top 3 real estate development companies in Colombia. He has more than 35 years of professional experience with more than 100,000 housing units, office projects, industrial and shopping centers. Prior to founding Amarilo, he worked for more than 12 years at Andes Realty and as a project manager at Morcon Constructions in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. For the past 4 consecutive years, Mr. Moreno has been nominated among the top 100 leaders with the best business reputation in Colombia. Additionally, he has participated in various board of directors of leading companies in the region, including the chairmanship of the board of Chemical, Colombian Chamber of Construction. And as for our third panelist is Mr. Rony Tamayo, the Vice President of International Business Initiative for Lennar Corporation. He has been with the company for over 14 years, mainly focusing on the finance division of the company. Lennar Corporation is a Fortune 500 company based in Miami, Florida, founded in 1954, with more than 1,400 active residential developments in 21 states in USA. Lennar builds and sells more than 55,000 homes every year. The international business unit facilitates foreign direct investment into real estate platform, matching foreign capital with Lennar's multiple real estate businesses, including project-level debt and equity, single-family rental, and institutional sales, funds, and asset disposition. All the while marketing and selling Lennar's US homes to the world at the retail level. Welcome. And finally, our fourth panelist, Mr. Zino Prins, as a real estate business developer at Cobraspen Groep B.V. Netherlands. The Cobraspen Group is a real estate concept developer active in Netherlands in the Amsterdam and Haarlem region. Every building has a story, soul, and Mr. Prins has been a part of the young member of the FIABCI Netherlands since 2012 and is now a board member. And the example of concept that has been realized are Sugar City events, hotel service apartment, and beach house hotels. So I believe this panelist that we invited today has really good reputation and projects that represent the global perspective that we needed for today's panel. And so today's session will be lasting 45 minutes. Therefore, we will have 3 questions, each to be answered in turn by our panelists. And then we will have time for discussion in the end of the third answers. So shall we begin by having our first question, which is like, what are the top 3 things a home buyer is looking for now? And has it changed pre, post pandemic? Any of you might want to start first? Maybe we start with Budiarsa.
I would like to start, if that's okay by everybody.
Okay. Please.
Well, I'm not familiar in all the countries what is happening, but in Holland we have a big shortage of homes in the mid-range segment in Holland, this shortage at this moment it's a shortage of 330,000 houses, which will increase to 420,000 houses in 2025. And it's very hard to get all the permits and to keep up and to build all those houses. The average pricing of those houses is in 2018 was 280,000 euros, and actually in this year we are now at a level of 310,000 euros for average house. So for regarding the top 3 things for a home buyer, I think the 3 most important things are, first of all, to get a good location, which has a good accessibility with public transport. Second, I think the pricing is very important. We're lucky now at this moment that the interest rates are very low. You can get a loan for 10 years at an interest rate of 1%. This means that you have that the monthly cost of a house is almost the same as driving a car. So, at last, I think it's very important for the Dutch home buyers that houses are sustainable, and that we improve the building environment, and it also saves costs for the owner of the home.
I see. And do you think things have changed before?
Well, no, I actually think the pandemic has no consequences in the sector in Holland.
I see.
Sean, yes, I was going to add to what Zino was saying. I think the shortage of housing is a global phenomenon. It's not, we are seeing it the same in the United States for the last 12 years. The whole country, the United States, have been underdeveloping, constructing. So there is more demand than offer, and that obviously causes issues with pricing. I think that's again a global phenomenon. But in addition to that, there is no doubt that the COVID pandemic has a way we live as a society, the way we work, and the way obviously that we buy homes as well. And our homes have become, more than just the place we live. They have become our office, have become our school, our center of entertainment. So these things that we have been living globally for the last 7-8 months, I think at least from the U.S. home buyer perspective and from the international buyers who are buying homes in U.S. it has changed. I think that the three main things that have actually are clear difference between after the pandemic is space. So the way our consumers think about the space has changed. They used to be, especially the younger customers, used to have a place small where they just can basically go and sleep, and everything else was happening outside their homes, right? Now that's changing because now you mostly have to work from home. Same from families that had kids. They used to live there, but they were not used to have kids going to school virtually, and next to them having to, people having to work remotely. So all these, very dynamics have been pushing the way we think as a consumer, as what we want and need. Lennar, a few years ago, came up with a design called Next Gen, which was designed for having different generations living together, basically. I have a main home attached with a smaller home where either my parents, the grandpas live, or kids were going to school, but they're given some separation of a space. Nowadays, that product has really been something that is really helping our company to go to the next level, because people are using that as a separate office, using it as a place where kids go on to school. And these spaces, these variances have helped. A lot of people are looking for this. I think the second one is people are looking for connected homes. I'm looking for technology embedded systems that let them not only go to school, but work, and at the same time, again, develop all their daily needs throughout their home. Lennar 2 years ago came out with the first Wi-Fi certified home. And nowadays we're actually working on Wi-Fi certified communities, because not only the home, but the surroundings of all the residential areas that need to be connected for people to, go with their lives without any interruptions. I think that has become a very important process. And I would say the third one, and probably the more important one for us as developers, is the buying process has changed. So now I think we see customers more open to technology, more open to, go online, learn, interact, not only see things, but really ingest, experiences and make decisions like they wouldn't do it before. They will never buy a home, at least in US, well, difficult to have somebody that will buy a home without going to the actual, home and looking at it. And, now we are seeing a change on that. And I think it's for good, because that will help us. I mean, people have been buying cars online for the last 10 years. A home shouldn't be that much different, but there is some, mental barriers that I think the pandemic, one of the good things out of the pandemic is that it's helping people move on and get, use technology as something that on their, for their successful and, in life and, in many different instances, including buying a home.
I see. Thank you. How about you, maybe Mr. Roberto Moreno?
Okay. Yes, in our market in Colombia, to give everybody in context, it's a market that we sell close to 200,000 units a year. And it's been a market that was affected by a cycle with the oil prices in 2017 to 18. We had a shock in our country, so our market went down. And so we were recovering at the end of 2019. And the market started really recovering the first few months of this year. January and February were extraordinary. And then it comes the pandemic in March, and in March, we all have to go home. And like Rony was saying, all three spaces became one. Our family, our home that we appreciate so much, our office, and our entertainment were all fused in one space. So I think here we have a great opportunity for the housing market, and I think we share the same experience that's happening in the US and in Europe, where families are appreciating much more the size of their homes, the ventilation, illumination, a place to work at home. And I think offices are not going to disappear. Offices are going to be with us forever, because I think where you want to interact, build relationships, confidence with your team players, this all happens in the office space. But definitely what's going to happen is we're going to have more flexible schedules where we can have a space at home to work. And sometimes schooling, right now, part of the schooling is happening also at home. So people are appreciating living in the suburbs or maybe in the small towns, and they can commute, but now they don't have to commute at different hours. So people are appreciating that more green space, more open space, interact with the family where everything is close. So there comes an opportunity for this type of market. So I see it as an opportunity in the housing market, and it was definitely in our country. We have a V-shaped effect where we had a great January, February, and the beginning of March. We dropped to 25% of what we were selling in our market in April, and we're back. September and October were better months than September of October of 2019. Actually, we have a great market coming back, especially in low-income housing, where we have subsidies from the government. Also, very low interest rates, like is happening in the other markets. So, and the best fuel for housing is low interest rates. And I think that's, and also for moving the economy and reactivating the economy in the employment, one of the best sectors is the housing sector, where we generate a lot of places for work, people, and we generate a lot of work also with the industry. And in the case of Colombia, 32 sectors of the industry are moved by the housing sector and 52 subsectors. So it really generates a lot of jobs and is great for the reactivation of the economy, to get the economy up and going and get the employment back and going. So I think, on the contrary, I think this pandemic has brought an opportunity for the housing market and for people to really appreciate and enjoy their homes. Like Rony was saying, people are, instead of just sleeping in their home, they're now living in their home. So they're really appreciating the space, illumination, balconies, yards, open spaces. So on the contrary, I see great opportunity in our market, and I'm seeing it in other places of the world.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Roberto. And maybe Mr. Budiarsa, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think I second the issues of the lack of housing, the backlog of housing in Indonesia as well as in other countries. I think our backlog is up to 9 million at the moment. And we do agree also that the affordable housing is the biggest market in any country. And Zino also mentioned earlier about the price of the house. We do also have the house, the affordable house, as low as 14,000 US. And that market is still there. And in fact, in one of our project, before COVID and after COVID, I think the discrepancy is not that much for the affordable housing, for the low income group. We have one project that we started in 2015, and up to now, we managed to sell more than 17,000 units. And even during the pandemic, we still launched some clusters, new clusters within the project. And you'll be surprised that the market can adapt. That we use we digitize all our marketing and promotion, and they choose their houses online. They put their down payment online, and that works. You see how actually the market can adapt. So this is very interesting. And regarding when you say, you mentioned about the three priority when people want to buy a house, I think I agree. Number one is, of course, location. And then the affordability. And for the primary market, of course, is a developer, a reputable, with a good track record. Then that becomes the main decision for the market to choose. I think that is I don't think that would be arguable, because they want to make sure they got the product that they pay for, the quality, and also be on time. And there is also, of course, because of this pandemic, I don't think the changes is that much yet. Besides that, they need extra rooms for working and for the kids studying. But as mentioned also by Roberto earlier, that I don't think they will work 100% from home. And office is still there, because you still need office for all the employees to collaborate and to interact. So we don't know yet how much the changes will take effect on the need for the work from home space. But for sure, there is something that we cannot avoid, even though small, but you do need the space for work from home and study for the kids. And plus, for the health conscious people, they need maybe a simple gym, because they don't go to the gym for exercise and to do simple exercise and sports. I think that is the changes that might come into effect.
Thank you, Mr. Budiarsa, and thank you all panelists. By then, we might as well move to the second question, which is, where do you see the new housing trends going in the future? Any of you maybe want to add something to it?
Sean, I can start with some comments from my experience from our industry in the United States. The estimate is around, just to give you background again about the United States, every year there are around 6 million homes that are sold, changing hands. So that's the size of the market of on the residential side. That is mostly compressed, I would say, around 80%, not a little higher, from resales, and then less than 20% is new construction. So last year, around a little under 1 million new homes were built. Those are a mix of multi-family homes, usually for rental, and then single-family homes for ownership. So that's part of the background. I think the two main things that we have been seeing as change, the new trends are one is reflected to the process of how to buy a home, and the other one is where are people buying homes. So the first one, maybe going back a little bit to what we were saying earlier, there is appetite for people to use technology as a path of buying a home. We firmly believe at Lennar that a frictionless buying journey is something that will help people be educated and, you know, at their pace, understand what is the best type of product, type of the size of the home that they want. But not only that portion, but then you move into, once you have selected a home, then the buying process. So we are seeing customers open to learn about what we call, you know, a frictional process. When you buy a home, then you apply for a mortgage. The mortgage also requires an insurance, and all these little pieces, when they are connected, customers feels like is, you know, easier, is less is easier to buy a home, and then you don't have to. In the past, we used to have with the mortgage, then call insurance company, then look for this. You know, everything was separated. So now we have an opportunity through technology to put all that together in one place. So I think that that's part of what customers are looking, and the industry is producing for these customers, and the companies that are able to produce this first will really take advantage in terms of market share. The second trend that we are seeing, at least here in the US, and I think is also a global phenomenon, is the urban exodus. For the last 4 or 5 years, we keep hearing people are moving out of the, you know, the dense metro areas to open places. I mean, I think this is also another trend that has accelerated significantly because of COVID. There were places where we were seeing people moving that has, you know, has accelerated. For instance, large cities, some of the largest cities in US, New York and San Francisco, they are seeing one type of this moving. So this is out of state moving. People are going out of New York because it's expensive, it's crowded, to other areas like Florida or California, where you have open space, a different type of life experience. So it's about the way you experience life. And the other one, which I think is more cross the board trend that we are seeing, as you mentioned before, Lennar has offices in 21 states, 55 cities, about 1,400 active developments. So we actually have a good sense of traffic nationwide because of the size of the company. We are seeing people moving from small rental apartments to larger homes outside the downtown area. One of the reasons is about flexibility. If you don't have to commute every day, Roberto was mentioning this, we think this is going to be changing. It's going to be more flexible. People don't have to get to the office at 8 a.m. and leave at 5 p.m., which usually is when you get all these traffic jams, and, you know, people, because of convenience, decide to move to a smaller place inside of downtown areas. Now that you don't have all those limitations, people are seeing that they have a, you know, for a better price, maybe have better schools, better locations, and they don't have to commute every day. So I think all these things that, you know, not new necessarily over the last 7 months, but things that have been happening for the last 3 or 4 years with technology and with preference from people to live in different places. COVID has accelerated all these trends and are helping, you know, reshape the way we build homes as developers, and the way that people live, and the assets they want to have for their and their families.
I see.
Guy?
Yeah, please. Please do.
I think that they have no choice, since they need a bigger space, a bigger house, but their financial capacity remains. So the only thing to overcome that is move away from the city center, or find a TOD, transit-oriented development project development, so you can save on the commuting. Or, as I mentioned earlier, move away from the city center where the price of the land is still cheaper. So that's the only way for them to fulfill their need now with the more space, but with the financial capacity remains. Plus, also now everybody is aware about environmental friendly development. So that also will come to the decision where and which developer that they would go to that can fulfill their current need.
I see. So you're saying like people more focus into the suburb because of the necessity that they need bigger space, but the income rate stays the same. And maybe Zino or Mr. Roberto, do you have anything to add to this point?
Yes, I see that in our market and in Amarillo, we've been applying a concept of city within a city where, you know, we have to do larger interventions where we can create more secure, more environmentally friendly developments. And I think in Colombia, we have, for example, in Bogota, is a very large metropolitan area, and we have Colombia is a country of cities, so we have large cities, and I think we have a great opportunity to plan our cities so we can have a 15-20 minute city where you can live and work close to home, or you can go on your bicycle, or you can you don't have to commute as much. And I think there's an opportunity there to plan our cities, and we're seeing here that again, like where my colleagues were mentioning, we have homes in the suburbs. We have 4 developments north of outside Bogota, and we're really selling quite a bit of those homes during the pandemic because people again are appreciating the flexible schedules and working from home. So we see an opportunity there, and like they were saying, financial situation might not change, but they can buy for the same price a bigger home in the suburb than they could in the city. So that's very important. The other thing is, we never thought we could do sales completely virtual in real estate, and we're seeing that that happened during the confinement that we had. We were able to develop tools where people can do a virtual tour of the development. They can go into the model in a 360 experience. They can sign all the paperwork virtually with an application called DocuSign. They can sign all the paperwork. They can do wire transfer, and they can do all the credit information. So we can do this, and I think this is here to stay, and I think it's very positive for our market and for the experience of the buyer. And I think the more we can make it easier for the family to do the whole process becomes much better. And I think the flexibility there is very important, and I think there's a great opportunity there to use the virtual and non-presential virtual tours becomes very important for our families and our buyers. So I see there again opportunity in both sides, so people can enjoy and buy a better home, and also the experience.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Roberto. It's a very good involvement in the selling of houses. But if we look besides the COVID pandemic and see what all the trends are that is not about COVID, but are still there, like the technical improvements that Rony also told about. We have such a so many smart sensors are available, which can make our houses way more efficient. And this is also a very good tool to use to make our houses more sustainable. For the new house buyers, it's one of the most important things, that their house is very energy efficient. And also there are a lot of trends in the way of building. We are well, every company uses concrete to build a building, but it was an invention of the Romans 2,000 years ago. So there are also many ways of building, like using a 3D printer, which we can use and automate the way of building. And this is also a very good tool to use our materials much more efficiency and circular. So that's a very good involvement trend as well.
Can I add something?
Yep.
I think regarding this, what Roberto mentioned about these virtual tours and online transaction, actually it has been happening even before the pandemic, but it is more during this pandemic and maybe also post-pandemic. But I don't think that would replace the conventional way of marketing, because, well, one thing, buying a house is different than buying any other goods. Like if you buy a car, you can get exactly the same car everywhere, and it's exactly the same use, and you can enjoy exactly the same experience, but not with the house. A house, it can be exactly the same design, the same building material used, but at different location, different environment is different. And that also will affect the pricing also, because that is what makes houses different than any other goods that they can use and buy online or just decide without looking at the surrounding. And regarding the next issue is regarding the green concept development. Now everybody is so aware about these environmental issues. That's why our company, we cooperate with IFC, is the subsidiary of World Bank, that issuing what they call the EDGE certificate, EDGE, Excellence in Design for Greater Efficiency. They will only certify you if you can show that you can save at least 20% in water usage and 20% of power use and 20% of the building material embodied that you are using. So we are happy that we are the first company with a few projects that issued by IFC to our project that we fulfill all those requirements. Because I think that that's the trends of the market also.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Budiarsa. And now, by our discussion, maybe we lead into the question about the suburbs. I would like to question you about how do you think the suburbs are changing, and are they going to continue being a lot and houses, or there's more densification in is coming to the suburbs? Hello.
Yeah. Sorry. You mean development in the suburb area?
Yeah. Yeah. How
I think that is one of the main solution actually, but you need to plan it in such a way that it is become a new township on its own, and of course with the accessibility, and now with the TOD concept, like I mentioned earlier in one of our projects, which is located 60 kilometers west of Jakarta, the capital city of Jakarta. But we have a double track train, and the train already fully air conditioned, and it's only take just over an hour from the project to the city center. So there is no nothing should stop developing in the suburb as long as it is well planned and well developed.
I see. Any add-ons? Perhaps Mr. Zino?
Well, I have one add-on, and it is that I saw a question also in the chat of one of the attendees.
Oh, Mr. Ivan. Yeah.
He was asking for the market demand for co-living spaces in crowded cities like Amsterdam. And we see a big trend in this area, not only for housing, but also for offices. You see that people want to share more facilities and don't need a car anymore. They have everything very near in their area. They actually rather buying homes than renting homes, because also the renting prices of a home in Holland is quite high. And I hope this is the answer to your question.
Yeah, I think it's pretty representative. Thank you, Mr. Zino. Mr. Roberto Moreno, anything to ask? To add on?
No, I think that definitely, like I was saying before, in our market, 70% of our population has low income, middle income. So we have to attract and see how we can, these people can buy their home, or these families can buy their homes. And like they were saying, the virtual experience is not going to replace seeing where they're going to buy their home, and they're going to appreciate more their environment where they're going to buy. And I think in the suburbs we have to be very careful to be able how we plan these cities, because we cannot just invade all the countryside and full of homes all over the place. So we need to be able to live and work near where we develop these developments. And in Colombia, with this program Mi Casa Ya, which is a program that's been working with the central government to give subsidies to the purchase price and subsidies to the interest rate, have been very positive for low-income housing. And I think that the compliance that we're doing with, we're working with EDGE, with Camacol, and we're also working with LEED Construction. And if we don't do this development sustainable, to be able to save in water, to save in materials, to build environmentally friendly projects. For example, we have a very large project in Barranquilla, which is called Alameda del Rio, 24,000 homes. And we're doing a compensation, environmental compensation. We bought a tropical desert, and we're replacing all this trees and all this over there, so we can compensate. So it becomes very important to look at that balance between development and the environment. And I think we have to be very careful of that, and to be able to do an balance between both of them, and how we develop both development and protect the environment. And I think that as the future is very important for all of us.
Sean, just to quickly add to what Roberto was saying, yes, I think we are all conscious, we all know that, these new tools, technology is not going to replace real life interaction between humans. That's never going to happen. That's correct. I think these tools will help us, expedite some parts of the process. For some people will be the whole process, for other people will be a part of the process. And I wanted to use this to answer a question I saw in the chat. The question was, are we seeing here in the United States growing populations because of where these new technology companies, startups are coming up, whether it's Boston, Palo Alto, Austin? And then the answer is yes. I don't think it's necessarily a trend that will change the way you know, cities develop, but for some cities like the case of Austin, Texas, it is, you know, there is an impact. We are seeing so many people moving from California to Austin, which is becoming, you know, a new hub of startup. So basically, we're seeing more appetite for people moving to areas where there are clusters of industries like we were seeing. So, you know, LA has always been the Hollywood cluster, New York has always been the banking, but those things are moving, and the technology companies that are coming up, they are not traditional and they're coming in different places. That if you think through the lens of having these virtual tools, we are seeing most people who are buying a home from Austin, but they're really located in LA, they are actually using these tools to get there before they are there. They are using the technology tools, the virtual tours, this type of processes for them to speed up their timeline, because they know once they get to Austin, they need a place to live. They need a place for their families. So they don't want to wait and get there, rent for a little bit and see what happens. They want to accelerate that process. So I think these things are, you know, becoming part, these tools are becoming part of our daily lives. And everybody has a different reality, but they are here to stay. They will just be used differently by the consumer, but they are being used. And I think that's.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Moreno. It's been very insightful, and it's been a really interesting discussion. Unfortunately, we ran out of time for this session, because we still got upcoming session of panels focusing on how urbanism can help in future pandemics. I would like to thank our panelists for sharing their insight and knowledge. Thank you, Mr. Budiarsa, Mr. Roberto Moreno, Mr. Zino Prins, and Mr. Rony Tamayo. So I leave this to Andrés.
Well, again, thank you all the panelists for participating. We appreciate, as always, your time and the time that you dedicate to us, the young members. As we always say in FIABCI, us in the Young Members Committee, we are the future. So again, thank you. The discussion was very, very interesting, and I think it sets us up perfectly for our next panel, which is going to talk about urbanism and different urbanism trends, and how are they going to change as we are seeing, or get accelerated because of the difficult times and the pandemic times that we actually been living. We saw this with technology, as they were talking about in terms of commercialization, in terms of processes, that I think it's been very, very interesting what's been happening, what has been implemented, and we actually, cities have been forced to even implement and expedite their city permit processes in order for different construction companies to continue on doing their business. As we see also, like we discussed before, and I think it's perfect that it's up, we're seeing a trend of decentralization, or are we saying of demetropolitization, as we saw from before. We were seeing before a trend of metropolization, people going back to the cities, trying to live in a 20-room apartment, because they would actually experience the city as part of their living room, and that was the trend. And but now we see that within the difficult times and having to stay home, unfortunately, has created this kind of concept that now we have to stay home, and we appreciate more the square meters that we buy and that we have, making, of course, the difficult transition that you have to actually move outside of the cities because of economic reasons, as we discussed in the previous panel. So with that in mind, I think we're going to start with this panel. First, I want to introduce all my panelists. So the panel is how urbanism can help in future pandemics. My first panelist would be Richard Plunz. Richard Plunz is an architect, an American architect, critic, and historian. He's a professor of architecture at the Graduate School of Architecture and Planning and Preservation of Columbia University in the city of New York, and founder and director of the Urban Design Lab, a research unit of the Colombian Earth Institute, created in 2005 to address the need for a design-based approach to shaping the long-range future of sustainable urbanism. Mr. Plunz has pushed the research related to housing, urban history, anthropology, and urban parametrics and design. Since the 1970s, he's actually introduced different urban context models and digitalized environmental modeling to create his designs and his interventions, now actually concentrating more in tactical urban designs to deal with stormwater runoffs in cities and to create a manual to actually create your own infrastructure in some parts of the world. Our second panelist, thank you again for participating in this, Richard. Our second panelist is Dani Muttaqin. He's the chairman of Indonesia Association of Planners of Jakarta, former infrastructure analyst at Nusatra Infrastructure, former executive director at the Indonesian Association of Planners, and former government political relations at the Asian Advisory. Thank you again for being with us. Our third panelist is Dr. Oyalowo, a lecturer of the University of Lagos in the Department of State Management and Valuation. She manages the University Center of Housing and Sustainable Development. She's responsible for the department's research management, network activities, training and learning programs, and most important, its housing advocacy. She was a member of the strategic writing group for the preparation of the Lagos Resilience Strategy, founded by the Rockefeller Center in 2019. Her research interests are contemporary issues in housing studies, informality, and urban sustainability, and a special interest in comparative African studies. And our last but not least panelist is Alissa Bankovskaya. She's the CEO of Synchro Space, a hub of innovation of cities. This is an app that brings together startups with different specialties, IT, professionals, architects, designers, engineers, urbanists, and environmentalists with the city government to develop and implement innovative tech and urban solutions for cities. Alissa is also head of the acceleration program of Ukraine Startup Funds, which the main goal is to help the Ukrainian startup become successful global companies. She has more than 10 years experience as an architect and designer, and she's an associate professor of the environmental design department in KSAACD. Well, thank you guys again for coming and participating in this panel. And I'm gonna go ahead and ask, I guess we can go in order of introduction, so we can go. It's easier. I'm gonna ask the first question. How? And I know it's a difficult one, and you can go probably 30 minutes on each one. But I would, if you could remain with your answers short, so we can actually move on with the discussion. So the first question: how can urbanism help in future pandemics? Richard, can you start? Thank you.
Thank you, Andres, and good to see you again.
Thank you.
This is a long topic, but I would say now, speaking more as with my historian hat, I think health has always been incorporated into urban design. I mean, for thousands of years, for cities. I mean, cities and pandemics have a long, let's say, symbiosis. So, so we're not in uncharted territory. Of course, now we're used to thinking maybe more even than in 1918 that the medical world will take care of us, and of course there's no guarantees there because of the you know, it's a moving target, let's say. What I think to mention in particular is the recent period, and actually in discussing this the other day with you, you were completely correct in mentioning the effect of the psychological effect, not just of, let's say, the mental health issues and how these issues have affected real estate markets, which I think is our main topic. And of course, the atomic period was very important because the fear of the atomic bomb was a big factor in moving the US real estate markets into the suburbs, the fear of the city, the need for decentralization. So I could mention many things, but I want to reinforce what you you had said, of course. In 1950s, 10 million of the 15 million people in New York City region changed houses, and a lot of that had to do, of course, with the flight from the city. Now, you know, and I know New York best. Now in New York, we have the same discussion. Of course, people have a country house and can leave, they leave. But this is a very small population, so our means are very different now. The suburban phenomenon here was highly supported by the national government, of course, subsidized enormously. We don't have that now. So I think the question of the population now and its stability inside the city is extremely important. But I would just, you know, I will stop there. I have many things I could say. I will say that pandemics, yeah, there was the Great Plague in Milano, 1630. And even writers at that time pointed out that a key factor in response had to do with having people recognize the plague for what it was, and they didn't do that. I think that's the same today. We have a divided country over this issue. I mean, the stupidity of face masks and all this discussion. Well, I'll leave it there. We'll come back to whatever interests you. Yeah.
Thank you. No, but I think and I think that you're talking on specific points that actually urbanism was created to deal with kind of pandemics.
Exactly.
This would go into the discussion forward. Mr. Dani Muttaqin.
Yeah, thank you, Andres, for this time. I think in history of cities, although I'm not a historian, urban design and development and improvement of cities are made by several needs and conditions. And one of its needs and condition is because of pandemics. In early stage in Europe, when it's facing a cholera pandemic in 18th century, had causing the urban design revolution. City have to provide clean water and health sanitation. Then the pandemic formed a new standard of city design and urban design that we applied until today. So today we are facing the COVID pandemic. I'm sure it will also revolutionize the way we plan the cities, and it will form a new standard after the pandemic about city structure, density, public transport, street design, building design, and also, of course, the using of smart and technology to support cities' activities and urban design and urban planning. I think that's the correlation between the pandemic and the urban design.
Thank you so much. I think, yeah, like you said, it's crucial that we see the correlation, and as we talked before in the panel before, that we see this new movement of suburbia and the planners that actually are in charge of this movement of suburbia to have environmental issues in their mind also. So we cannot develop suburbia as we saw before. I think that's one of the most important things that we can discuss. Dr. Oyalowo, do you have any thoughts on this question?
Yes, very much so. Thank you, Andres. And of course, Lagos, Nigeria, where I come from, also have an historical link between health and urban planning in the life. After suffering the there was a need to really fall back on urban planning, urban design to actually respond to this serious issue at the time. So there is no doubt that urban design is really all about health and how we do it, because when the way we plan and build our cities, it defines our health and also our quality of life. If you come back to the way we do not plan, also affects our quality of life. So I think that,
Dr. Oyalowo, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been telling me that there's some problem with the audio, and then some people cannot hear you. I'm reading and hearing the questions. Alexandra, Maria, can
you hear
help?
me now?
Yes,
Is it
much
better
better.
now?
Yes, yes, thank you.
It's much
There's
better now.
yes, thank you.
Okay. So just quickly, I was going to look at urbanism and COVID-19 and pandemics and all of that from the perspective of the other side of town in developing countries, where we need to focus on how urban design can, affect the microenvironment, the home, in terms of ensuring that houses are designed not to be overcrowded with facilities, with drain facilities and water and other sanitary facilities that really help during periods of pandemics such as this, where there's no vaccines and we're all resorting to hand washing and all of that. So people need to have access to these facilities in their homes and their environment, in public places, and urban planning has to respond to that. And also the flexibility of city fund in converting assets to respond to the pandemic, if you like. For instance, we've had a couple of sports facilities being converted to isolation centers in Lagos. So that kind of flexibility needs to really be inbuilt in our cities so that we can respond better to pandemics. So in this, working innovatively with what is existing, we can urbanism can actually, help to reshape our response system.
I agree with you. Thank you. Thank you for your insights. I think, like, again, especially in areas like Africa, getting in these kinds of infrastructure first, I think is the priority, even to deal with the pandemics. And of course, especially when you're dealing with informal housing, how do we retrofit them? Thinking of this it would be a very interesting way of looking at this. Thank you, Dr. Oyalowo. Well, now, last but not least, is of course Alissa Bankovskaya. What's your insight on this?
Good afternoon, dear all. Thank you, Andres, for the invitation. I really appreciate the possibility to join and discuss such important topics. First of all, I'd like to tell what are we doing in Synchro Space. It will help me to answer the question. Synchro Space is a hub of innovations for cities. It is a unique platform for the synchronization of activities of different specialists, such as IT, architects, designers, engineers, and environmentalists, with the aim of joint creation and implementation of technological and urban projects. We help cities to solve their relevant problems and challenges with innovative startup solutions, on the one hand. On the other hand, our team strives to be a driving force for the growth of professionals and startups and their collaboration with cities and companies, where the result is a comfortable, ecological, and smart urban environment, high-grade services for citizens, and Ukraine's strong innovative business. In response to your question, the correlation of health and urbanism, it's very interesting. I want to give you a few examples. The whole world has been living in a pandemic for almost a year, and Ukraine as well. We have worked this year with the relevant tasks of 4 Ukrainian cities, and most of them are related specifically to the incorporation of health into urban design and the solutions of related problems. But despite the pandemic, the city's focus has been on tracking air pollution, open water pollution, and heat stress in public spaces and other problems. So Teams of different specialists working at our urban hackathon together with representatives of municipalities and expert mentors offered rather good solutions. It is important that the best solutions will be implemented in Ukrainian cities and have the potential to scale up in other cities around the world. For example, a comprehensive solution from the UUM team that solves the problem of heat stress in South District in Zaporozhye due to intensive vegetation and shading by trees, green roofs, a rainwater collection system, and an increase of color albedo. The project also includes an interactive park with the climate change laboratory for children, which simultaneously performs cognitive and educational functions in the urban space. Thanks to this solution, the public space of city becomes comfortable for the pastime of citizens and contributes to the improvement of their physical health. One more example is the solution of Budiarsa team. It's park of sculptures on water for the lakes in Gostomel, Kyiv region. Such water sculptures purify water with use of bioplato with aquatic plants and auxiliary mechanical aeration in the deep water zone. So due to the fact that we create solutions by bringing together different specialists, and these solutions are at the interaction of different ideas and areas of activity, in addition to the practical function of water purification, this project draws people's attention to the problem of water pollution through culture and art. So as for influence of the pandemic on urban design, we are faced with the need to create conditions for social distancing in the public spaces of cities. Yeah. Also, I'd like to invite all of you to our upcoming online event dedicated to the cities of the future development, which we organize in cooperation with FIABCI Ukraine, Synchro Space 2020. And I'm happy that Andrés will also take part in this event. Thank you very much.
I will.
So you can find out more about such solutions that I have already mentioned and about many other innovative solutions for our cities. And also see lectures by innovators on the topics of urban design, ecology, and technology for our cities of the future. Interesting discussions, and as well as a global overview of innovations from FIABCI influencers in the sustainable city development from 5 continents.
Okay, thank you, Alissa. So no, yeah, like you said, like there's many there. I think, and then from the panel from before, we saw that developments and developers actually are seeing TODs or this type of new cities development as an initiative to actually attract customers. And I think like this type of designs and urban designs concepts will be very successful actually when it comes to sales even. So because you can actually begin to sell it with the post-pandemic mentality, of course, in mind of more open spaces, more looking at issues of as you were talking of puddling, of water treatment, and these other issues that we have across the world. Okay, so we're going to continue on with the third one, the second question. Sorry. So we're going to go on. What is the biggest design failure in cities that ease this spread of pandemics? We want to start with Richard.
Yeah, sure. I think I would pick up on Alissa's question of social distancing, and I do think the social component of dealing with COVID now is extremely important. It always has been, of course, in urban pandemics. But you know, the human species is basically about urban density. I mean, we're not wild creatures in the woods, right? And so that raises now, especially with airborne, serious questions. I mean, waterborne was a little different, also very serious, but now we're involved with a new era in terms of urbanization of the planet, in terms of the importance of cities. And we've been working with WHO, you know, the World Health Organization, on their deployable facilities. But the point at which their strategies stop working is with social distance at the small scale. And no city has really been able to deal with this. And they do a lot of work in refugee settlements, for example, Syria and whatever. And when a person is contracting the virus, of course, they go home to very dense conditions. There's no alternatives. The social infrastructure is very important. They want to be with a family. Even in the treatment facility, they tend to be isolated. We're trying to develop schemes whereby people can be isolated but still see their family inside a facility. So I think, from my point of view and experience now, this is really a big gap, and we even see it in New York. I mean, the hottest spot outbreak in New York City was in the Bronx, which is the poorest county in the nation, and that was a high-rise building in which, of course, there wasn't the possibility to be dispersed, and it was a building for basically low-income families. So from my point of view, this is really a stopping, you know, a ceiling on what can be done. And of course, the World Health Organizations would verify this because they have a huge experience at this particular moment. So I would leave it there. There are many other things you could say, of course.
Of course. But no, but like you said, like so in a sense, urban design cannot deal with an airborne pandemic. It's because, again, we go back to our families, and eventually there it's where the hotspots are. Yeah. We can ease, and I think the easements of having like we were saying before, having infrastructure for social distancing, in a sense, parks and all this infrastructure, of course, is going to help. But within a dense condition, the spread is going to continue. Yeah. We would need to see how. Yeah, like I agree with you. The urban design is very, very hard to actually deal with these kind of things. But again, I think it's an important. It's important to know our limitations also. Dani Muttaqin, do you have any?
Okay, I think one of the biggest failure of our urban design concept is about the structure of the city. You know, when we have when we plan, the structure is meant when we plan for the center activity, the density, and the infrastructure plan. When we plan a single center, it's more population and more activities in that area. So of course, the density in that area will high than other zone or other area. This also, this of course will causing the pandemic and is to spread one to another. And I think the multi-center activities, multi-center activities will distribute the population and activities, and also will support the social distancing can be applied. That's first the structure of the city, and also I think about the public transport. We have to very strict on the public transport capacity, no more over capacity in public transport, especially in developing countries like Indonesia, my country, and also in Jakarta. So and so we can reduce the needs for public transport by using technology, and the government have to support the using of technology, and the DKI, the Jakarta government also already try to digitalize and community-oriented and develop the community-oriented development. In the future, I think we have to provide also more center, more open space, green spaces, and also using technology in our urban design and urban planning concept.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's the implementation of all these tactics that we actually see, or the urban designers even know about greener space, bigger sidewalks sense because it's with those whole these spaces in the city that most of the contagions between of course non-family members happen. Dr. Oyalowo, do you have any inputs on this question? Going to continue on with Alissa. I think Dr. Oyalowo is having a technical issue. Alissa?
Thank you for the question and for the answers. I absolutely agree with previous speakers. I consider that the biggest design failure, for example, in Ukrainian cities, is in transport infrastructure. Unfortunately, public transport is poorly developed in Ukraine. I know that not only Ukraine is in such situation. So the most common are metro and buses, minibuses. They are very often congested. Apart from all the full seating areas, people fill the entire space while standing. At the same time, safe distances are not observed. As a result, a large number of people are in confined space in which they are forced to contact each other. During the quarantine, of course, health security measures are taken, but they are restrictive and do not solve this problem. The second aspect of the same problem, from my point of view, is the lack of infrastructure for individual transport. There are a lot of cars in Ukraine, and there are conditions for auto traffic. There is, of course, the second side of this coin, traffic jams. To illustrate, in the center of the capital of Ukraine, the center of the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, is designed for a maximum of 60,000 cars. But in reality, about 1 million a day pass. So can you imagine the scale? But speaking about the infrastructure for individual transport, I mean cycle paths. Bicycles, scooters, electric vehicles are an excellent and safe solution for getting around in a pandemic. But such movement requires appropriate conditions, special paths, parking lots, sharing services, etc. Roads and infrastructure that are not designed for this are, from my point of view, one of the biggest urban design failure. I can also note among such failures dense high-rise buildings and insufficient amount of green spaces.
No, thank you. So
thank you.
I think that's very interesting what you're saying about the individual, that there's the lack in most of the cities for individual transport in terms of bicycles, and how we're changing this, this concept. Actually, both in Bogota, we've been implementing a lot of this, and then actually it has helped also, I think, to ease a little bit of the public transportation needs, also easing, I guess, the need for them to use this and for contagious hotspots. So I think, like I was saying, of course, there's no one big solution for the pandemic in urbanism, but it's a series of tactics across the board in every single thing that could actually help and ease things for us. Okay, I'm going to go into the last question, which is gonna be a little bit different what I told you, because I'm going to focus, because we have only, unfortunately, 10 more minutes. It would be, we see a trend of suburban model coming back. We see a trend, and from the speakers before, that were actually developers from all over the world, they actually see their sales going up in the housing model of suburbia. They know that they cannot develop suburbia the same way that they had done before, because now we have to think of sustainable and environmental issues within that, in terms of getting the services. What is your recommendations for them as an urbanist to see, or how do they can integrate themselves better with suburban and the needs of this market? Richard, you want to start?
Well, I think the suburban phenomenon is for a particular economic class, and of course the whole planet doesn't exactly respond to the question of dispersal in the same way. So I understand that I understand that there's pressure to leave cities, but that's going on for centuries with pandemics. So and cities come back again. As was, of course, the case in New York. We had this dispersal as a huge initiative in the 50s, 60s, and the suburbs are now densifying. So, but our case was really hyper dispersal, right? Single little houses. What I heard from Dani is something more like sub-centers, and I suppose those are centers of density, right? And what I heard from Alissa is about transportation infrastructure. That all makes sense up to a point, but the tower in the park model, which came from modernist urbanism, having to do with tuberculosis primarily, and dominated most of the 20th century, that's not exactly a model that's immune to COVID. And we see that in New York City, because you still have point densities related to, spread of disease. So I see it a little more, I don't see quite as prescriptive. I do agree with Alissa about micro scale, the importance of micro scale. With WHO, we're talking about hand washing stations, right? Excessive, and that's infrastructure, right? In neighborhoods that have nothing, including not adequate water. So I think there's got to be really a wide scale range of scales of response, and of course there'll be dispersal. I mean, here, whoever could get out of Manhattan left because they had the money to go somewhere, but that's a small proportion of those who are left behind, and those who are left behind are very important to the economy of the city. They're really the ones doing the work, so it gets to the economics, and at least in our case. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Of course. Yes. Well, I don't know if there's because we have a particular model in Colombia, which is suburbia of social housing, that we actually seen that. So it's suburban cities condensed of social housing because of actually cheaper land. Actually going again a little bit against what you're thinking in terms of they're displaced to the suburbs, right? Because of the pressures of economic pressures of land value within cities, right? So we have that phenomenon, and I think we see it also in some parts of Asia too, because of the price of land within cities. They got actually dispersed, and that's been happening a couple of years. And now, but we look, and I think where they're talking about the TODs and all these transport-oriented developments, of course, help connect these parts.
Yes.
But I agree with you. I agree with you in this.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah. It's a complex question. Yeah.
I know. There's no right answer. Anyways.
Right.
Yeah, of course. You know my questions.
Yeah.
Mr. Dani, do you have any input on this?
Yeah, I think I will tell about the Indonesian case. In Indonesia, the new developing of affordable housing is about average 30 kilometers from the city center. So it's because of it's very quite far. You can reach the city center but more than 1 hour, and it will cost very high to the middle and low income community. And I think the solution is that we have the government and maybe with the private sector can join how to provide the infrastructure, massive public transport and TOD system. Even they have the very far distance, but they can reach the city center more cheap and less than 1 hour. I think the distance is not the problem anymore when we can provide the solution for the public transport and infrastructure. I think that's my opinion.
Thank you, Dani. Dr. Oyalowo, we have you back now.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Perfect.
Oh, perfect. So there is a question on the Q&A. Are we looking at that now?
No, we went to another question. I'm sorry. That is more into how do you see the suburbs developing in the future? More, we see the pressure from like some parts to actually develop the suburbs, and what would be the recommendations in terms of this in Nigeria?
Yeah, suburbs they have different characters across the world, across the world cities, I should say. Suburb development in my area, and I will be speaking about Lagos, has been as a result of the pressure on land in Lagos and the high cost of acquiring housing and land in Lagos. So most people have been forced to move to the suburbs just to have better accessibility to land and you know, cheaper housing and all of that. I don't see COVID-19 stopping that, or this pandemic stopping that, in as much as the macroeconomic variables are still there, and the city center itself is still, you know, highly competitive in terms of spaces. The thing though is that people then travel, you know, several kilometers from their work. Most of the people that live in the suburbs actually do work in central Lagos and the coastal, on the island of the Victoria Island and all of that. So they spend so many hours commuting in their private vehicles or through public transport. So, and because of that, you know, there is a higher, what's it called? A higher propensity or exposure to infectious diseases. Mm-hmm. So it's a trend that unless we're able to, you know, reduce housing affordability within the city center or provide employment opportunities in the suburbs, then that interplay between hopping on the public transport or bringing out their own cars to, you know, make those long distance travel, you know, during the peak periods, it's still likely to you know, go on in the foreseeable future.
Thank you so much, Carol. I think I agree with you in those terms. Especially we see this thing also happening within Colombia, where the social housing is actually is actually the suburbs, in compared to other places, and we are actually seeing, and we'll see what happens to the land value in the cities to see if we can accommodate now even for social housing, because the trend before actually that we saw before is completely the opposite. It's actually getting more and more expensive, the land value of the city. Okay, last, unfortunately we only have 1 more minute for the panel. So Alissa, please, if you could be very, very short on this. Thank
Okay.
you. Sorry, cannot.
Thank you. And I'm absolutely sure that we can find a universal solution. Every neighborhood has its own historical issues and urban design failures. In Ukraine, we have the reformed decentralization system, where the budget is located in united territorial communities, which can include a couple of neighborhoods in one community, which can implement one synergic solution, which can help the whole community. So, for example, the project with the lakes rehabilitation. 7 lakes in Gostomel area in Ukraine, and the attraction of the tourists. It's other solution that we focused, for example, this year with I'd like to add that we started this year to work not only with huge cities, but with the little cities and united territorial communities in Ukraine. And we see the different problems, and we have the instrument how to work with the unique needs and unique challenges of each specific community.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Again, thank you all for participating in this panel. We and the young members committee really thank you for being part of this and helping us, of course, create this kind of events for our members. Like we say, and I said it before, the young members of every organization is the future of the organization, and we thank you again for being our voice also and helping us put our voice in. With this, I will going to thank everyone and all the attendees that participated in the panel. Wish you all the best. Stay safe, and I'm sure, as you see, the real estate market is going to continue and it's going to continue changing. And I hope this panels and information that you got from our panelists is going to help you on decipher what the market is going to come in your in your area. Thank you all. Here I also leave you with the next online forum that's going to be November 19th, same time, 2 p.m. Paris time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.